Hello everyone and welcome back. This is episode 8 of our third series on painting A Song of Ice and Fire tabletop game miniatures. In this series we've been painting Ramsay Bolton, the Great John Umber, and Gregor Clegane, the Mountain That Rides. All of our work is sort of coming to its culmination now as we've gotten to the point where all of our colors are based in, basically, and we're getting down to detailing. In this episode, we're going to be doing facial detailing for the characters as well as for the horse that Gregor Clegane is riding on, since he doesn't really have facial detailing to do anyway. And then we'll be doing some texturing for our bases. Starting out here, we're going to be doing the eyes, and this is probably the fiddliest, hardest part of painting miniatures that I actually do as part of my process. I've tried to avoid most fiddly bits, and I've tried to avoid most extra steps that one could do just for painting these miniatures to get them up to tabletop quality and be able to play games with them as soon as possible. There are many things you could be doing above and beyond what I show in these tutorials. I realize that I'm practicing those kind of on the sides, that I will show them off and I'll kind of understand what's going on. Stuff like, how to highlight and layer things without just, firing one color over top of a primer. But to be honest, especially now that we've tried azimuthal shading in this series, I'm very, very happy with how this one layer of ink just washed over a primer turns out. That being said, there's one area in particular that it isn't satisfactory to me for, and I've mentioned this before, it is the faces. I consider the faces the focal point of a character, the place that everyone's going to look at to see the detail, really. And so I put in just a little bit more work on the faces, and I've been continuing to sort of refine how I want to do faces as time goes on. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but in almost all of them, I will recommend that you do the eyes. The eyes, of course, there's all this literary stuff about being the windows to the soul and stuff like that. I don't know how much truth there is to those, but they are definitely really important features on the face, and they really help you identify how the face looks. So by just putting in the white spots, you're going to be doing a lot to give your characters some character. If you just do white spots, that'll be enough to draw out the eyes. Do make sure that they have a dark rim around them before they touch your skin tone. If they don't, they're just going to blend in with the skin tone and they're not going to be recognizable. If you, as I do here a little bit, go over the lines of the eye with your white paint, there are a couple things you can do. You can try to wipe away the excess, or you can go in and use more paint if you want to trace around the eye, which we're going to be doing later with black ink at the same time as we do the pupils, or even you could use a marker. If you tend to draw, like your hobby is illustration, you're probably going to find that really familiar, and that is sort of the those artists' markers, very fine-tipped artists' markers for doing line work on a drawing, a fine liner, some call it. If you use one of those, you can get a really, really fine job of drawing the outline of the eye and the pupil. And that's actually what I started using more of. What I'm showing here, though, is just using the materials at hand that, to keep everything concise and packed in. We're using very, very few different paintbrushes, very, very few different inks. And so this ink is from that same pack that all my other inks have come from. I'm using a well-pointed brush here. I've made sure to shape it ahead of time. And now I'm just going to draw around the outline of the eye. If you know sort of the anime or manga style, where you get that outline across the top of the eye, then maybe down along the sides a little bit, and maybe a little bit underneath, I'm sort of going to aim for that shape, with the pupil drawn into the eye, the white that we just put in as well. That shape is going to help shape our white into a more recognizable shape. I don't know how many more times I can say that. And it's also going to make sure that our white area is separated from the skin tone area, so it doesn't just look like a blob across the whole face. We keep this T sort of form and the cheek form that we highlighted with our skin tones earlier. We're also going to be putting this pupil here, not in the center of the eye, but I make them look off to one side or the other. If you make them both trying to look right ahead, A, doesn't look super natural in a lot of cases, and B, any minor misalignment is going to be really obvious, and your characters are going to look a little cross-eyed if you look even a little bit close at them. So I try to make them either looking off to the left, looking off to the right, something like that, as often as I can, because if both of the pupils can be aligned or justified off of one side of the eye, I know they're going to be aligned. just try and make sure that you can make the eyeballs or the pupils pronounced without blacking out the entire eyeball, unless of course you're looking for black eyeballs, in which case you can probably skip most of this. I'm taking a brush here that's a little bit cleaned off. It's my white brush that I was using earlier, and I'm just sort of poking around the black and the white to make sure that the eyes look the way I want them to. What you'll hopefully find is that once we've done the sort of multi-toned skin tone on the miniature, and then we've gone in with the actual eyes and then the black for the eyes, you should be getting a really nicely detailed face for really relatively little effort. This is obviously the most precise work that we've probably done on this miniature to date, where most of this was sort of slather color on, make sure you wipe away any excess as you inevitably go over. Now we're working in very, very small areas, but I'll tell you what, I got really shaky hands. But I've still managed to make it work, and I do think it looks good. You can see I've gone over there a little bit, and I'm trying to wipe it away with some other clean brushes just to make sure that the eye is separate from the skin area. That's just it. You might have to do a little bit of correcting, that's fine. If you're following along with the exact same materials as I am, you'll find the airbrush flow improver kind of useful for this, because while it isn't specifically marketed as a paint thinner, it has some mild paint thinning properties. So wiping away excess, like that big blob of white on Ramsey's face here, can be made a little bit easier with application of the flow improver. If you're not following along with the exact same materials as me, but you'd like to, I recommend if you're in North America to go to Michael's, the arts and crafts store. That's where I buy all my stuff from. They've got coupons almost all the time, up to 50% per item. So if you pick it up over several weeks or whatever, you can put this stuff together for real cheap. If you have other local art stores, hit them up, because locally you can normally get things that save on the shipping in particular, which is very, very nice. If you can't do that, in the description I've got Amazon affiliate links for all of these items. If you'd like to follow along with the exact same stuff and you can't get it locally, take a look down there. If you follow the Amazon affiliate link, I do earn on any qualifying purchases you make on the other side of that link. Not just the item it links to, but any other items you buy while you're on Amazon, following through from that link, if that makes any sense. Keep it open in that tab, the cookies track it, that kind of stuff. If you do this, it's a super nice way for you to support the channel while also getting a little something for yourself. Really appreciate it, but again, take a look locally for what you can get, because obviously you're probably going to get a better deal on a lot of things that way. What we're doing on screen right now, I've grabbed some white paint, some magenta paint, and a little bit of black paint, because I'm trying to get a kind of dusty, light pink, or not light, not super light, you know, like not fluorescent. The black's in there to pull down the saturation a little bit and darken it down, but like still a pink. And what we're going to be doing is just the inside of the fleshy parts on Gregor Clegane's horse. Now, a bright pink for the inside of these particular areas may not be necessarily perfectly accurate to a horse or to all horses, but in this case, because the horse is black and it's just going to have armor on top and there's not a lot of detail going on, I just figured highlighting the insides of the nostrils and the insides of the ears would be a really nice touch to give the horse a little more character. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying this dusty color here inside, like deep inside the nose and ears, and then we're going to lighten that color up a little bit and put on a little bit more in the areas where light might hit, just to give it a little bit of depth. Like I said before, I try not to do lots of multi-step techniques as I work on these miniatures, and I try to just sort of bang it out, get a really workable result as fast as possible because I'm working after work or I'm working on the weekend, whatever. That being said, some little touches, detail touches like this can do so much to make your miniature look a little beyond, tabletop ready and ready to play. They can look ready to play, but with that extra little bit of oomph, that'll make people look twice. I'm also going to use the same pink to go on the character's lips. Now, doing the lips is sort of optional, but it can, especially in a character with a lot of face, like Ramsey here, it can really make them look, well, it can just highlight more facial detail. When you're doing details like this as well, just like we're going to do with the nose and ears, and just like we did with the face, try to keep in mind that getting just a couple different sort of variations of the same color in a small area can give it a lot more depth as well. It'll make an area look a little more cared for. It'll make it look a little lit and dynamic. So if you've got an area that you want to just make pop because it's a detail and you're putting in the work, I'm of the opinion that mixing a little bit more white and probably yellow in for a lot of stuff, because you want to make it look like it's sunlight, so you want the highlight to be a little yellower. That's just not that hard to me if you've already got the colors on the palette. So going back around and just like brightening it up and firing it on again in another layer can be a really nice way to add some depth, add some shine to something. That being said, if you wanted to do that across the whole miniature, obviously you'd get a really good effect too, and that's what a lot of people do, right? They're going to put down a base color, they're going to shade that base color, which is kind of what we're doing with our inks here, and then they're going to highlight that base color afterwards. And what you get is your 3-tone gradient, which is sort of the minimum number of colors that you can have in a small area for it to look like a gradient from a reasonable distance away to our eyes, you know? So that alone would be an extra step. You're going to look at probably doubling the amount of time you're spending on the miniatures, but you're going to get a very, very different look to them as well. You might like that look a lot. It looks kind of painterly. You can make it look quite good. If you look around for some really good artists out there, you can find some great examples of sort of more in-depth painting like this. On Instagram right now, I've got my Instagram account. I follow several painters that I think are quite good, who paint science fiction and fantasy miniatures alike, a lot of Warhammer stuff, because that's kind of the easiest stuff to find. Take a look at them. If you can follow through to the people I follow on Instagram, you can take a look at some of the guys that I follow and see what I'm getting inspired by when I, roll out of bed or whatever and check my Instagram account. And if you'd like to follow what's going on with the channel, Instagram's a great way to do it too, because I normally take pictures of what I'm working on and post them up there as I work on them. And those projects, they sort of slowly but surely make their way to the YouTube channel. But YouTube, I'm doing it, real time, these little episodes going slowly, talking about everything so that I can really go into depth in every step. And, well, as much for my benefit as for anyone who's watching, insofar as I get to watch it again and watch every little stroke and go, oh yeah, I don't do that anymore because blah, or maybe I should try something different. And I'm expecting, hopefully, you guys are having the same experience where you're looking at it and going, oh man, I get to watch everything he's doing, and maybe you don't like all of it, maybe you do like some of it, maybe you haven't thought of something, I don't know. I hope it's helpful though. What we're doing now is we're going on to actually texturing the bases. So I got this texture gel that I picked up from Michael's, the art store that I mentioned earlier. And I think it's for like canvases or something to put some texture on them. But it's just a kind of cool stuff. It's got these little plastic beads in it. And the little plastic beads are suspended in what seems to be white glue, basically. And I paint it on, and it makes a sort of rocky texture. This is just one of lots of ways that you can texture your bases. Another fairly cheap one is to just put a bunch of white glue on your base and then fire some sand at it, and that sand's going to sort of dry on and make, well, a sandy texture. Or if you want to get really, really sort of nitty-gritty with it, you can go ahead and use baking soda and cyanoacrylate glue, so like a super glue. Be careful with that, because obviously super glue, the smell's not great, and if you get it on you or on your stuff, that can cause some issues, and if you get it on the plastic, it can make the plastic go cloudy. So that's kind of tough. I normally do it before priming. I'll have an example of that in later series. There's lots of different ways you can texture a base, though, and texturing the base I find pretty important. Although these Song of Ice and Fire miniatures do have slightly textured bases already. So if you were to just hit that with a brown wash, like that sort of cork brown that we've done already with a brown wash, would still look fine. This is just another idea of something you can try out to add some depth to your miniatures. Anyway, that's already the end of this episode. This was a pretty quick one, but it was a lot of detail. It was pretty dense, like those are really precise things to be doing, and it's probably we're getting into the nitty-gritty of making the miniatures. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it made you think about some stuff that you could do with your miniatures in the future. If you didn't learn something, then I hope at least you had fun. And if you do want to mention something or have any questions, throw them down in the comments. I'd love to see it. In the meantime, that's all for now. Tune in next week for us going on to some very, very finishing touches. And thank you again. Go play some games.